society, NATCON of Pershing Rifles, Pershing Angels, the Foundation, and the Alumni Association. We just want to just say thank you all for joining us for this first ever leadership panel. And what's the purpose of it? The purpose of it is for us to be able to give techniques, insights, and ways on how to lead in the right direction, how to be a great leader within whatever branch that you decide to go in. So we decided to get a diverse group of men and women, of leaders within the force to be able to speak into your life and to help you with answers to the questions that you may be having right now before you can mission and go out and do great things. So we're going to have candid conversations on topics that may be relevant to you. And then if you have any questions, please, you can be able to wave your hand by using in the reactions or hit participants. You'll be able to wave your hand, or you can put it in the chat box, and we will have someone that could be able to monitor the chat and grab those questions that you may have that you want to answer to, or you need some insights on. So real quick, before we go into it, my name is Tion Singletary. I am a captain in the Army National Guard, South Carolina, and I've been serving for 16 years. And that's just a little bit about my background for my service. With me being in National Guard, I have a civilian life as well. I have a job, I have a business. So balancing all those things really do plays a big part on us being able to be an effective leader in our craft. Now we're about to go around the room and have everyone at their own particular time to be able to introduce themselves at this time. And if you need to be unmuted, just ask me, and then I will unmute you at that time. So who want to go first and share us who you are? All right. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, family. I'm Colonel Sabrina Thweet. I am the ace of Spring 97 of the National Society of Persian Angels Company Oscar IV, and a 1999 graduate of Virginia State University. I commissioned as a distinguished military graduate in the Medical Service Corps, and my background is human resources. I've served as a platoon leader, XO, company commander, battalion commander, and I'm currently assigned to Senior Service College at the Eisenhower School at Fort McNair, and we'll be taking brigade command this summer at Walter Reed. I'm excited to be here today. I'm very proud to be a member of this family, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Excellent. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Colonel Scott Gunn. As you can see there, my call sign is Cap, which probably means I'm a pilot in the Air Force. So I commissioned out of Det 365 for Air Force ROTC. I graduated Harvard University. I was in Pershing Rifles C-12 up in MIT. Got commissioned, went to Shepherd Air Force Base and did my pilot training there. Spent 3 years in Okinawa, Japan, flying F-15Cs, a couple years in Vegas doing operational tests, a couple years in Alaska, a few more years out in Okinawa, Japan. Then I went and did a fellowship in DC on the Chief of Staff of the Air Forces and the Secretary's Executive Action Group, working speech writing and strategic communications. Did another 6 months at the Air Force Association in DC, did some school, then went down to Florida and spent 3 years flying F-35s where I was the Operations Support Squadron Commander. Went up to DC after that again and went to National War College at National Defense University, spent a year there. I was on the Joint Staff, J5, working policy and strategy for competing with China. And then I've spent the last year deployed out to Al Udeid, which is in Qatar near Doha. I'm the Chief of Strategy for the CAOC out there, the Air Operations Center, basically working strategy for the air components efforts in the Middle East. Right now, I'm actually in Alabama. This is a rather appropriate time to be having this discussion. I'm 2 weeks into a 3-week course down here that they put all incoming operations group, vice wing commanders and wing commanders in, because this summer I'm going back out to Shepherd for my first time in 18 years to be the vice wing commander at the pilot training base there, which I am definitely looking forward to. So this is great. I'm looking forward to your questions. I have not been around a lot of second lieutenants and first lieutenants in a long time, so hearing your concerns is really important to me because I'm going to be going out training them afterwards. So I look forward to getting the most out of this. Thank you.
All right, who's next? Someone trying to save themselves for last, huh? Best for last? All right, ma'am, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Jen Gerganis. I'm an aircraft maintenance officer in the United States Air Force. I pledged Pershing Rifles in 1998 and graduated from North Carolina State University Det 595 in 2002. I've spent 10 years overseas, living in Germany, Korea, 1 year in the UAE. And I've spent some time in Afghanistan as well. 3 times squadron commander, twice in Korea and once in Mountain Home, Idaho. Primarily worked fighters most of my time in aircraft maintenance, F-16 and A-10s. A-10s definitely have a special place in my heart and are my favorite aircraft. And I'm currently working in the Pentagon as the aircraft maintenance officer, chief of force development, which is pretty much talent acquisition, talent management, and talent development. I'll be honest with all of you. I actually started out in Army ROTC, and I was extremely intimidated when I looked up at the seniors and the leadership roles that they had within the detachment. And I thought, man, I can't do that. Like, I don't have those leadership abilities. I can't be that person. And so I left Army ROTC. I'd heard rumors that, the Air Force ROTC program was a little bit easier. And I was like, okay, I got this. But I can tell you at 13 years in the United States Air Force is when I took my first command of a unit in Korea with F-16s and A-10s with over 800 airmen. And I was 100% confident when I took that command. So maybe some of you are like me when I was in college and didn't think I had the ability to be a leader. But I can absolutely tell you that the Air Force 100% prepared me for that. And like I said, I was extremely confident when I had to take over those roles and responsibilities. So the military will get you there if if you're a freshman or a young cadet. And don't think you have those capabilities. You have the opportunity to lead as a lieutenant, as a captain, and to learn from a lot of your failures and your mistakes to become a strong leader down the road. And I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Who's next? I'm gonna pick it then. Go ahead and go, sir. Tom.
All right, I was trying to unmute. We got it figured out. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tom Campbell. I'm commissioned out of Morgan State University in 2003, won PR 99 fall. So I was branch detail armor when I commissioned, and my primary branch was signal. And after about 5 years in signal, I became a public affairs officer in 2012, and I've been a public affairs officer ever since. So my experiences include armor platoon leader time. I was a signal company commander. I was a SIGO as well for an infantry battalion in Iraq in 2006. I also got the Army to send me to graduate school for 1.5 years full time, which is a great experience. So I'm happy to talk about that during the questions. And then I've been a public affairs officer at the 2-star, 4-star level. And then now I work at the Office of Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, where I serve as a Defense Department spokesperson. I've been married for 17 years. As a matter of fact, today is my 17th anniversary, so I can't go too late because got to get the wife out to a nice dinner tonight. And I have 3 kids, so happy to talk about balancing family life along with that. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Who want to go first? Eric or Ty?
I got it, LJ. I'm Captain Tyran Askew, commissioned from Virginia State University, proud graduate of Virginia State University. Oscar 4 Pershing Rifle, 4P Spring 2K12, Oscar 4. I've served in multiple positions. When I first commissioned, I was a platoon leader in Fort Hood. Took my platoon in Afghanistan when they transitioned me over to a battle captain and a DSSTOIC. Came back, Company XO, went to the 3 shop. After that, they sent me to Quantico for a year at the Expeditionary Warfare School. Came out to Warfare School, came down to Fort Stewart, Georgia, where I currently am a dog-faced soldier. I serve as a company commander, and I'm currently the brigade S6. Pending any questions is all I have. I look forward to this.
Awesome, awesome. So real quick, panel, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute everybody on the panel, and you can leave yourself unmuted, and then that way you can always interject at any given time. Go ahead, Brother Eric.
Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Major Eric Littlejohn, commissioned out of Virginia State University, class of 2008. 1PR, spring 2005, underdog company Oscar 4. I commissioned as a signal officer. Started out on active component under 101st, where I did S6 time, company XO time in a signal company, and then some more S6 time, both at the battalion again and brigade level. Transitioned out shortly thereafter into the reserves as an active guard reserveman. Active Guard Reservist, AGR, to which point I still served in all active duty units essentially up until about 2018. My experience is in the Pacific, CENTCOM region. I've deployed multiple times to Afghanistan, Syria, Turkey, Jordan, Kuwait, and spent some time on joint staff, well, not the joint staff, but joint time down at Special Operations Command, JSOC and USFK. Now I am currently in command of a schoolhouse and a depot activity at Tobian Army Depot. So I've got a very amount of experience, both on the active side, the joint side, and through various modes of service. So I look forward to entertaining any conversation and questions the field has, and good to see some familiar faces.
All right, there you have it. So you have been introduced to all the panel here this evening. And now we're about to go into some questions. For an admin note, Brother Sean, can you send me a private message, please? Send me a private message. So the first question that we have for this great fine panel that we have, and I've been listening to everyone introducing themselves, so I'm gonna ask this one first. I'm going off script here on what we just talked about.
No.
But a question came to mind when I was hearing everyone introduce themselves. And the first question I have is, what was your major challenge during your time working towards becoming a commissioned officer? Got the wings. That's what I like.
So my major challenge was just transitioning, period, as a cadet. I did not do JROTC in high school. I did not have many family members or any close family members that served in the military. So I was not surrounded by a military culture. How I got into ROTC is I needed money to go to school. Senior year, I had transferred my junior year from one high school to another. And so even though my grades were good, guidance counselors already knew who they were, looking to give scholarships to. And I just happened to pass by the guidance counselor's office, and I saw that back in the day, it was a big black and gold folder that said Army ROTC scholarship. And I think I saw a 4-year scholarship and not really paying attention to the fact that it said Army ROTC. And so showing up as a freshman, as an MS1 scholarship cadet, that means you had to go to everything from PT to lab to FTXs. And just that transition alone with PT was my biggest challenge. However, once I got into ROTC, I was all in. The running joke was that my dorm room phone was forwarded to the ROTC Cadet Lounge. And so I just threw myself into it from the very beginning, and I rose in the cadet ranks. I ended up being the cadet battalion command sergeant major by the time it was all said and done. And so just that transition of not having any military experience, but going through the program with the mindset that I can do this, I overcame the challenges that I had.
Thank you. Waiting for someone else to jump in.
I can jump
Your
in.
experience.
My experience is a little unique. Some folks here have known me. One person in the chat's actually known me since I was 11. But for me, it's adversity and discipline. And most of those who were in or around Virginia State when I was there know discipline was kind of my largest challenge. So for me, I grew up in DC. Behavior issues got me booted out of the house and sent down to Atlanta, Georgia to live with the disciplinarian in my family, who's my aunt. to which time getting to college allowed me to get out from underneath that disciplinarian and do whatever it is I wanted. I got a 4-year scholarship that I lost my first year, and got it back somehow as a 3-year scholarship. And throughout that time, again, for me, just trying to stay focused and just do the right thing, be in the right time, right place, right uniform, right attitude. Somehow, as the years went by, it became my challenge. I wanted to do what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do it, how I wanted to do it. And I wanted my attitude to be whatever I wanted it to be when I showed up there. How would I say my transition to commission was? It was rough, and it was an eye opener when I came on active duty, because it is a discipline engaged environment. As a lieutenant, stepping into an organization where half of the people I outrank are either older than me or the same age as me. Discipline becomes key when you talk about doing the right thing all the time, even when no one's looking, all the way up until, being at Fort Campbell. There's only been so many options for a young lieutenant who wants to enjoy themselves on a weekend to do. I can very clearly in my mind hear my battalion commander saying, stay off of Cat West, stay out of Cat West, and stay off the clubs on 41A. So, okay, no problem. I'll go up to Nashville. First day in Nashville, and there's somebody on this call as well that was with me as we ran out of the nightclub. First day in the club, Sigo is the battalion signal officer. I heard about 19 of my Joes come running across the club, and we beelined it out of there. So for me, my transition had to be learning discipline that would continue me forward in the future. Because for me, this is the way I pay my bills. This is what I've done my entire life, is being in the Army, and I refuse to take that money out of my family's bank account, food out of their mouths, and I refuse to lose my image in front of those that I gained a great image in front of. And so that's kind of my transition as you start to transition from college, your mindset of a student, about MS3 year, the light bulb should start clicking for you. You need to get yourself together. I stopped wearing earrings MS3 year. I came back, fresh ears pierced. Colonel looked me in the face, said, how many Army officers you see walking around posts with 2 earrings in your ear? None. Earrings were gone. How many people were promoting parties like I was doing and throwing parties that were my peer lieutenants? None. I saw it as a business venture and extra money, but there's other ways to do and host events in a professional manner. So that's kind of where I'll leave mine and cut off the stage, is discipline and resilience through adversity.
Just a second on to what LJ said. Hey, so when you join ROTC, you make a commitment, right? So in the military, we often hear that we're of the small percentage of people who are willing to dedicate their life to the country, right? When you make that commitment to ROTC, you kind of give up. You don't give up your rights as an individual, but you have to remember you're not like most people, right? You're not like the 40 to 50 other people in your course, right? There's probably one other person that's in the ROTC program with you. I say that to say, as you transition from that freshman to your senior year, you slowly start to pull away from things. You realize that you may not be able to go to Thursday. You probably can't go to the club Thursday night because you got PT Friday morning, or you have some type of event with that builds community relations. So over time, it's not going to happen overnight. Never tell yourself that you're just going to wake up. You join ROTC and you wake up the perfect, most disciplined person. It's a process, and it takes dedication. You have to realize that when you make the commitment to say, I want to be an Army officer, I want to lead America's sons and daughters, that you're no longer like everyone else on campus. And I think that's a mistake that sometimes we make. But I'm telling you now, you're not like everyone else on campus. And use that to your advantage. Like, remember, you may not be able to go to certain events. You may not be able to do certain things because you committed yourself to something greater. And that's protecting and defending the Constitution of the United States. And it's a process. Again, don't think that once you join ROTC, you're the most disciplined person. It's not going to happen that way. It takes time and it takes commitment. And you have to practice it daily to get to where you want to get to.
Anyone else have anything on that?
Yeah, I'll answer that also because I think it ties into some of the other stuff you'd potentially consider talking about. So I have a slightly different experience and background. I joined late as well, about halfway through my freshman year, and had to catch up, kind of like Sabrina did. not in terms of joining late, but in terms of catching up and kind of having to do a bunch of stuff. But I found that one of the things that the colonel told me while as I was progressing up through the years was make sure you stay true to yourself. And I think that's been something that was a challenge then and becomes even more of a challenge as you move up. I mean, I've been in almost 20 years now, and trying to remain true to yourself throughout that can be very challenging. So you have to grow as an individual. You do have to learn that discipline. You do need to change somewhat in order to be a part of the military, and just as a human being, you got to grow. Certainly, when I got married and became a dad, I had to learn a whole lot of new skill sets. But trying to remain true to yourself through all of that is absolutely essential, because it gets exhausting if you're trying to be someone that you're not. And that you just can't. You won't last. You'll sooner or later you'll get worn out, tired out, and then you'll look back and you'll get out and hate the service for some reason. When really being true to yourself, it keeps you happier. And the other piece I'll draw in, just because of where we are currently as a society, I know the military is putting a whole lot of focus on diversity and inclusion, but the key to that is to maintain that diversity. And the only way we do that is for people from diverse backgrounds to remain true to themselves. We are a fraternity. This is a fraternity. We just got to be careful about what kind of culture that fraternity ends up forming itself around. If we don't form it around a diverse culture from the very get-go, then we can't have everybody be true to themselves. So I think the discussions we're beginning to have are very important. I think we've got a long way to go in those discussions to work to getting that. But the start of that is to remain true to yourself, no matter who you are, where you are, what your background is, and kind of carry that forward, because the service needs folks from every sort of background.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. And for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and go to the next question. We got a lot of questions in the chat box, more than what I was expecting. So I kind of want to hit on some of those a little bit, because these is the one that's hitting them in the heart. And one goes with something that we talked about in our session together before we start this, and that was advice. So someone wants some advice on transition from active component to AGR. What is your advice that anyone who may want to switch from either active duty to reserve, National Guard to AGR? Anyone want to speak into that?
Don't do it. No, I guess I don't know if I'm the only reservist on the panel, but I guess I'll tag onto that one. So I'd start by saying, first point is make sure your transition's not emotional. A lot of people transition off active duty very emotionally. Your initial commitment is 3-4 years. I don't know what the Air Force does, but at least for the Army, you accept the contract, and that's your initial 3 to 4 years. All right, so you can go from lieutenant to captain. Very often, if you don't go to Kuwait or Korea, you're going to be at your first duty station only. And plenty of my peers made an immediate decision. I hate my first job. I hate my first boss. I hate the Army. Those things don't always equal up. Unless you've had some traumatic or tragic event, the Army's always going to find a way to make it better. I started at Campbell, went to Kuwait, and it was on a high note. Hawaii, Korea, Tampa, Florida. It was outstanding ride, right? But I sat at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, very pissed off a lot of the times, because I was just S6, and branch manager said, "Hey, I'm going to send you to another S6 job." You know what, man? I'm out. So be careful first when you decide to transition, that you're not doing it for a temporary emotional moment. Second is, and this goes even till you hit your 20-year mark and beyond, is when you transition, or if you decide to transition, be prepared. AGR is not guaranteed. It is an ask. I just happen to meet all the right standards at the right time that allow me immediate transition over. I happen to have a TS clearance. I happen to have spent consistent time in the Army, and I had no wife and no kids, and so I can move to an immediate fill. There are plenty of people that apply for AGR, and they renewed their application every year for 3 years prior to me, and were tiered way above me. It's a crapshoot sometimes. So if you're going to transition from active and you're expecting to go straight into AGR, don't set yourself up for failure immediately by just saying, "I'm going to get out." You can go straight from active duty into AGR. If you got any questions on it, you can always feel free to email me. And that transition rolls very smoothly, where they try to keep it with no break in service. And then the last point I'll give you is understand what you're getting into. A lot of folks will say you the dream from the 1980s and the 1990s AGR program. Say, hey, you want to be AGR? Oh, and there's a difference between AGR, reserve, and guard. So, you want to be AGR? You're going to get to stay in the same place forever. You're going to have the best job. Nobody's going to tell you what to do. And life's great. It's not even real Army. They never deploy. I'll tell you right now, commission signal, go into AGR program and end up under the 335th. You'll probably deploy every other year. You'll also find yourself in an environment where I've only been in one reserve unit in my AGR career, and I was the battalion S3. The battalion commander is part-time. Well, I shouldn't say part-time. The battalion commander is TPU. The entire staff, TPU. The subordinate company commanders, TPU. First sergeants, TPU. I have an SSA, which is a senior civilian that serves as the commander's representative at the battalion level. She quit. She took an AGR job. My SAA, who was supposed to help us in personnel and admin actions, she quit. She took an AGR job. My SOTS, which is my school operation training and security. So pretty much my AS3, he quit. He took an AGR job. And so here you have one lonely major who's never done anything in the Army Reserves, who's left to answer questions to a battalion and brigade commander who have to be ready to go when they walk in the door on those Thursday or Fridays to get the mission done, because our battalion was deploying. And so again, I'd say truly understand what you're getting into when you do it, but AGR is still a hidden gem. You have an opportunity to expand yourself and do jobs you'll probably never see on the active component. You have the opportunity to, I say like the Air Force. One thing I've learned working at joint is Air Force is joint, right? They start as lieutenants working in a joint environment. You come into the reserve side, that gap bridges a lot quicker than it does in the active component. In the active component, we need lieutenants and captains down on the line. So I think it was Agnita to ask the question of what is it like to transition. I think that changes for everybody based off of your preparation, knowing if you're going to go into the reserves, where AGR is a Title 10, meaning you can go across the globe, or into the guard, where it means you have to actually apply for the job, and you may even have to take a rank cut because the position in that state is not a captain billet. It may be a lieutenant billet, and they may drop your rank down. And in order to progress, you then have to move into the next slot. I'm always a big proponent of the reserves. Nothing against the guard, just more opportunities here with us.
Really? That's how you feel?
So just be very cautious and do your research and understand that if you transition and you decide I'm going to go TPU to AGR, that gap may be a little longer than you planned.
Yeah, true statement.
And I'll just add on real quick to Eric's discussion on don't make it an emotional decision. Once I came back from my year-long deployment, I'd hit 10 years and I was ready to make the switch. I was tired and I was like, okay, I just need something different. And one of my mentors actually convinced me to stay. And I think what I'm most grateful for is having had the opportunity to be an active duty squadron commander. And that, to be perfectly honest with, is a life-changing experience and opportunity for me. To be able to, lead airmen and have a positive people in, the lives of others, the sons and daughters of America, is a truly amazing opportunity. So now when young officers come and talk to me about getting out or switching over, I was like, just wait, take your opportunity to be a squadron commander. I tell you, it is an amazing opportunity and you don't want to miss it. So I'm very grateful for my mentor. That was able to convince me to stay, but I absolutely get it too, right? Everybody has different, family and life situations that where the Guard and Reserve may be better fit for you. But just like Eric said, just want to echo, don't let it be an emotional decision.
Thank you. I think that's the big takeaway there. Don't make a decision, a very important decision based on emotions, right? You want to make sure you have a clear mind and be clear-headed before you make a serious decision that's going to change your life, right? So make sure that you calm yourself, calm your nerve, get in a good place, then you come back and entertain that question that you may have for yourself. All right, President Willis is going to come on here soon. After I ask his next question, I got to go. And again, we are balancing our life, right? I'm a speaker in the civilian world, so I got to go for a podcast. And Brother Willis is going to come forth and continue to lead this. And I'm going to send him the questions that I had stacked for this great panel here. So the next question that I got, and it comes from the chat room, and this one was dealing with, a current aviation lieutenant. Their question was, what was something that wasn't necessarily trained in ROTC that you wish you knew prior to going into the military? For me, it was property and property management. What about you? Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I'll start. I think let me just hop on the property management piece. That was a good one. When you first come in as a new lieutenant, you're going to be, at least on the Army side, especially, you're going to be responsible for, a platoon, potentially if you're going to go be a platoon leader, and you're going to have, anywhere from, I was an armor platoon leader, so 4 tanks, 16 service members, and, millions and millions of dollars worth of the tanks and associated equipment. So you are going to be responsible for all of those things directly. So learning, talking to your platoon sergeant, the supply sergeant, learning how to properly manage and maintain your property books will be key. Also, you're taught how to do you're going through ROTC right now to experience and to learn how to lead America's sons and daughters, but you're not going to be prepared for everything and every adversity and every challenge that you're going to face. And you're going to need to find others, mentors that you can turn to, and peers when challenges arise. I think the second day I was a armor platoon leader, I saw a very significant hazing incident. And it was right in front of the entire company, the company commander, and it was when a Joe was getting promoted, and that was almost 17 years ago, or almost 18 years ago. So times are much different now. Not that it was right or wrong, but or not that it was right, but it happened. Things happened back then that are definitely not okay. And I saw a significant hazing incident. I saw in front of the company commander, and I was a brand new lieutenant, and this unit had just gotten back from deployment to Iraq, and I was nervous and I was inexperienced, and I didn't really know what to do about it. I knew it was wrong and that it shouldn't be happening. And when I saw the company commander didn't do anything about it, I just kind of left it alone, which was not the right answer. But then that night I went home and talked to my father, who was a retired sergeant major, and asked him for advice on how I need to approach this with my platoon sergeant, who this wasn't happening in my platoon, but how do I approach this with him to let him know that I don't want to see those things, because I'm responsible. If something happens to one of those soldiers in your unit with something like that going on, and you see it and you know about it, that's on you, and you need to stop it from happening. So the advice I got from my father was, when I do my initial counseling with the platoon sergeant, which was forthcoming within a few days, was to just let him know right from the beginning that what you saw was not okay, and you don't want to see it again, or you don't want to see it in this platoon. And that's exactly what I did. Again, talking to, I was 22, talking to a guy who was 30 years old, been in the Army, combat hardened. I was a little nervous about it, but he was a great platoon sergeant. He's a sergeant major now himself. And the good platoon sergeants are there to take care of you as young lieutenants. So he rogered up, he understood, and was never an issue during my time as a platoon leader.
That's great. Is there anybody else that wanted to comment on that one? Something that you were not really taught in ROTC that you wish you had had some training or some discussion about before you got on active duty?
I think as a kind of a follow-up to that, and especially being a pilot, I would say it continued through most of my Air Force career, but certainly same with my time in ROTC, was just an appreciation, understanding of the enlisted corps and how to effectively interact with, lead with, and take care of them. It was less something that became an issue for me when I first got in, because again, going through pilot training, being a pilot, officer, supervising officers really until I became a squadron commander at about 15 years in, was I really needing to understand how to work with and lead enlisted. That's not the case for most career fields, but it certainly was for mine. And just to understand that, and the appreciation I gained from that experience was phenomenal. But I know right after, I mean, the most interaction I had with enlisted members were a staff sergeant and tech sergeant who worked our admin while we were in ROTC, and that's it. And so for all the folks that come out, and Jen probably has stories on this, I would imagine, that go straight into leading enlisted members right off the bat, it would be a significant shift, and it certainly was for me, again, 15 years in, having multiple flights worth of enlisted members to lead at that point in time. So that would be something I think would be worthwhile to get more experience in and understand a little bit better. So if you've got them at your detachment, or which I'm sure you do, talk to them a lot, get their advice, get their perspective, because that's a great way to earn trust later on, is to listen and to understand. Over.
And I'll add a little bit more on that too. I think one of the biggest things, like in ROTC, right, you learn that as a second lieutenant, you're going to outrank everybody. But one of the things I learned and really figured out later in my career was the difference between transactional leadership and transformational leadership, right? When you come in, you're going to outrank what I think 95% of the people on that base, or, you know, wherever you're assigned to. And you have to understand that they have to do, to an extent, right, what you tell them to do because of your rank and maybe because of your position. That does not make you a leader, right? That's transactional leadership, that they're doing what you tell them to do because they have to. So make sure when you go in and you become that second lieutenant and that lieutenant, that you understand to an extent, right? They have to do what you tell them to do, and that's transactional leadership, and charge yourself and challenge yourself to be a transformational leader, right? Someone who goes out there, understands the responsibilities of your airmen and of your soldiers, understand what they need to get their job done, and earn their trust, and learn to lead that way. And I think a lot of folks kind of come in, especially as second lieutenants, right, and know that everybody has to, like I said, to some extent, listen to what they say, but that's not necessarily leadership. So just understand the difference between transactional and transformational leadership.
Hey, and there's a good, someone caveated something that was said earlier. We were talking about being told that, you know, this is the way we do things. You know, how would you guys respond to that? There's one of our attendees said that she felt the same way about arriving at a new unit and witnessing events that she didn't agree with. Spoke up about it, got looked at and told, you know, you're new and you don't know, this is the way it's always been. How do you guys react to that?
I'll take it.
Oh, go ahead, Ty. You got it.
No, so I remember back in 2014, my first deployment, I went to Afghanistan. My platoon sergeant, I'll never forget this guy. He started off as a good platoon sergeant, and over time, I was working in the RNCC, which is a regional network control center. I'm a SIGO, so just imagine about 40, 65-inch TVs just tracking the RC Southwest, which was at Calf Kandahar, right? And the second or third month of the deployment, this joker started coming to the office without his Kevlar or his IOTV. And then the soldiers started doing it, and he started punishing the soldiers for doing it. You gotta remember, I'm a second lieutenant, 22 years old in Afghanistan. I'm thinking, hold up, something's not right here. Like, we still getting IDF. We still seeing troops in contact. We had this big blimp, the PTIDS, Persistent Threat Detection System. We could see everything, so we know the threat is real. So I pulled out that 4856, and if you haven't seen that, I think the colonel already mentioned it. 4856 is one thing I wish I would have seen a little sooner, right? The first word on that counseling form is developmental. Using that to develop these young soldiers, right? Because they always, the question was said, they do things a certain way because that's how it's always was done. No, so I asked him, so I said, why are you coming? He was like, sir, I've been deployed 4 to 5 times. We don't need this. I said, no, you setting the bad precedents. We still got soldiers, we still taking IDF, get your gear on. Put it on paper. Next day, it didn't happen. So I kept documenting, called a battalion sergeant major, and about a month later, the guy was no longer my platoon sergeant. I never forget that, right? I say that to say, people say this is how we do things. It's always been done that way. we can't do that, especially right now, as we transition as a military, right? So we spent the last 20 plus years in combat in a counterinsurgency environment. And I remember being in basic training when I was a young private, learning COIN, counterinsurgency techniques. And as a company grade officer getting ready to transition to a field grade officer, we talk a lot about LSCO, large scale combat operations, right? And as we are executing different training events, a lot of NCOs say, sir, we should do it this way because that's how it's always been done. That's how it was done during a counterinsurgency environment. We're transitioning to large scale combat, right? So as an officer, sometimes you have to take a step back and figure out what's the bigger picture. Because if we do things the way they were always done, we're setting ourselves up for failure. As the officer, you have to sit back and say, okay, what is my higher intent and why? Start with why. Why are we doing this? And once you can understand the why behind the way we do things, and you can convey that to your formation and to your soldiers, they will understand, all right, this may be how you did it in the past, but for efficiency and overall safety, let's transition it. So never be afraid to make the decision. If you see it makes, all you all cadets right now, right? Y'all remember the 5th principle of patrolling? I think it's common sense. Use that. Sometimes we got to step back, use that common sense and say, yeah, that's how it was done in the past, but let's do it a little different these days. With the technology and modernization of the Army and just overall perspective, you know what you're doing. Be confident in yourself. That's all I have.
The P in the Army values stands for personal courage. And so at a certain point, you know, you have to be able to look yourself in the mirror and know what is right from wrong and be able to sustain that standard and enforce that standard. And so as you're coming into the military, you know, your reputation often precedes you. Your character is what's going to keep you, not necessarily your competence all of the time. And so you just have to have that personal courage to stand up for what is right, regardless of whether you're going to lose your job or not. Because at the end of the day, when you take this uniform off, you want to be able to say that you committed to doing what was right at all times. And so just keep that in mind. It's just that simple. Don't compromise your character at all.
Hey, Willis, if I can add one thing, and it's just going to be a question to Sabrina. So as an incoming brigade commander, and I center this around, so this is the way we always done things, but the Army's also done this thing called PCS. So, ma'am, as an incoming brigade commander, you sit down in a room and your staff just tells you, hey, ma'am, don't worry about it. You're new. This is the way it's always been done. What's your reaction to that?
You set me up.
It's a good question.
It is a good question. And so I've never been one to go by this is the way it's always been. You know, in this day and age, we talk about innovation and having leaders that take risk and all of these different things. And so what Sabrina would probably say, Colonel, we would probably say, well, just because that's the way it's always done doesn't mean that's going to happen while I'm in charge. So show me what the plan is. We'll adjust fire from there. If how it's always been done is still right, then we will continue to do it that way. But if there are some adjustments that need to be made, I'm not afraid to make those adjustments. And you can't be either as leaders.
I asked that because that was exactly the quote I put in the chat. Was one of my brigade commanders said it. Somebody said that in the middle of the meeting. He looked him right in the face and said, his name is Brigadier General Work. He said, the fastest way to lose your job in this organization is to tell me that's the way it's always been done.
So one of my favorite Colin Powell quotes, and I had to look it up to make sure I got it right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it is the slogan of the complacent, the arrogant, or the scared. It's an excuse for inaction and a call to non-arms. That's a quote that I read his book early on, either as a cadet or a new lieutenant, My American Journey, and remember that quote. And it was something that I've carried with me for the last nearly 18 years I've been in the Army. If something's not right, everyone's kind of touched on this already, but if something's not right, you have to address it. If you let it happen, then it becomes the new standard. And you've probably heard this before, all right? Change is good. Don't be afraid of change. Just always, Ty had talked about asking about why. Always start with the end in mind. Don't just, don't do it for the sake of doing it, but do it for the right reasons. What are we not accomplishing that we need to accomplish? What's the commander's intent? What is his or her end state? And what could we be doing better? The way they're doing it might not be wrong, but there could be a better way of doing it. Ty also talked about how we're a military in transition. where a lot of our experiences, especially us who are more senior, are Iraq and Afghanistan. I've been deployed a few times to both those countries. All right, so a lot of us who are more senior bring a lot of that experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we are a military in transition. Secretary Austin, he talks about China as a pacing threat, with Russia being a threat to the U.S. as well. But China really being the pacing threat for where we're going for the future. So experience is good, but fresh perspective is always needed. And you will bring that fresh perspective when you get to your units.
And I can tell you that I'm somebody that my bosses have told me that I rage against the machine too much, that I'm not a team player, that my passion comes off as aggression, or it's too aggressive because I'm passionate about, my why, taking care of our enlisted airmen, and I want to make change for them. But I can tell you, despite what, my peers and even some of my bosses have said about me, I sleep very good at night. Because I know, right, my moral compass, that, what I've been standing up for and what I've been doing, to me, is what's right. And just make sure that, especially as a second lieutenant, in maintenance, because we have so many enlisted, they tell you, hey, make sure you talk to your senior non-commissioned officers, right? Get their advice, latch onto them and learn from them and grow from them. But just know, though, as a second lieutenant, you are still responsible for every decision that you make. So that is your decision. So make sure that you are taking inputs from individuals, but don't allow anybody to influence you, because you're still responsible for that decision at the end of the day, even as a brand new second lieutenant. And like I said, I sleep very well at night, because I know that I'm not allowing anybody, right, to change what I think, personally is right and what's wrong.
Awesome.
I'll add
hey, thanks, panel members. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to add one thing to the conversation. I think everything everyone said has been great. The challenge will come not in those things that are character questioning or moral questioning, because those are usually pretty easy. You're like, you can do that 1,000 times in the past, but that is right out. That's wrong. It's generally the things that are a little bit more blended in terms of, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, that are the tougher ones. And I think everybody kind of touched on it. The key for me is the thing I've taken with me over time, especially working in the Pentagon, is I'd rather have a good team than a good idea, where I can have the best idea I've ever thought of and push that as hard as I can. But if I don't build the right network of people, and laterally, vertically up and vertically down, who believe in that as well, sometimes convincing them that it's their own idea, then that thing's not going to go very far. And so same thing when you roll in, you are in charge, you are responsible, but definitely, as Sabrina said, if you can listen, if you can hear why they are doing things in the past, consider that, because they may be right. But then if they're not, just like you said, explain very clearly, hey, here's why that's not how I want to do it in the future. We'll watch it. Maybe you're right, maybe you're not. Again, this is not the moral thing. The moral thing is easy. Then you lay your foot down. But for the other ones, get the why, explain to them the why you want to do things differently, and be willing to change. Because I've done that plenty of times and found out that, in fact, I was wrong. And actually the way that we're doing it was actually probably a good idea. But never accept the reason that, because that's the way we did it. That's certainly not the right reason. Over.
Awesome. And I just want to reiterate to the folks on the line, if you have any questions, please make sure you type them into the chat window so we can grab them and line them up. I've got a question here from Jamie Bass. What is the best advice for an officer transitioning from their branch detail, say from infantry to signal, and how can we best prepare ourselves for the competition in signal, or to be competitive in signal?
Oh, can I take this one as a signal officer? Hey, so Army, right? I'm assuming Army. So in addition to doctrine, there's so much doctrine out there to read, right? That's what we have, the ATN, the Army Training Network. And I tell you, anyone with a CAT card can access the Army Training Network, and it'll give you the medal, the Mission Essential Task List for any type of unit, from infantry to special forces. I kid you not. If you go into the Army Training Network, it'll tell you their Mission Essential Task List and exactly what is needed to accomplish that unit's mission, right? So as a former company commander, I remember one of my METs was provide network transmission pad, and that required a satellite dish. and I still remember some of the steps of the Met. But I tell you, just the 1/3, 2/3 rule, right? If you go back into the overall preparation piece, taking the time to read Army doctrine, ADP 6-02 is signal operations, ADP 6.0 mission command. If you go back to just read the basics, and then from there, get an understanding of what you want to do, go to the Army Training Network, it's in there. DTMS, all you need is a CAT card enabled, and you can pull down the METs of any of these units. But furthermore, once you get your orders or you get the unit of assignment that you're going to a mechanized infantry brigade, or you're going to a sustainment brigade, or you're going to a CAB, a combat aviation brigade, you can take that unit, go to the Army Training Network, pull that unit's medal, and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do to prepare that unit mission command for success and the overall command, how you best support that commander. So I say read the doctrine, read regulations, use ATN, and then use forums like this, use your peers. Like a lot of us, if you reach out to us, because I still do the same thing. I reach out to my mentors, I reach out to the young LTs, because a lot has changed since when I was a platoon leader. I had TPNs and JNNs at 50th ESB and Fort Bragg. They're getting rid of that. They're phasing it out. So using the entire network of Army doctrine, regulations, the electronic training aids they have, the CATs, the DTMS, and just your peers. That's the best way to get after it.
Hey, Tom, you want some of this?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. It's been a long time, but I did 2 years as a branch detail armor, like I said. So my first 2 years in the Army, and then transitioned to signal. And I transitioned to signal I was in Germany, and we were just a few months from heading to Iraq, and I wasn't going to have time to go to the transition course. So it was all on the job training for me. So I got to go up to be a deputy brigade signal officer. Deployed to Iraq, had a lot of opportunity to learn from NCOs. Everything that Ty said, I second. That's all excellent advice. But just so I don't repeat what he said, I'll just talk a little bit about my experience. Learning from my NCOs, I just like you have to do when you're a brand new lieutenant, is no different. I was a first lieutenant now, so a little bit of time under my belt as an armor officer, but now moving over to signal, getting my NCOs to explain to me how to do the job, how to meet the needs of the people that you're there to support. Because in the Army, if you're not combat arms, then you're supporting combat arms, and your job is to make sure that those combat arms guys, those guys, and those men and women on the front lines can do their job effectively and return safely to their operating base or from their training mission, whatever it is they're doing. So about halfway through my deployment in Iraq, it was a 13-month deployment. I got sent over to the infantry battalion to be the DS6 because they were firing the guy. So I had that extra added little bit of nervousness there because they were getting rid of him, and so I needed to understand what I needed to come in there and do. At that point, I had plenty of time to learn from my NCOs, but also, and to whoever asked that question, going from being an infantry officer, you already know what it is you need from your signal support on the front line. You already understand that. So in a lot of ways, you're bringing an experience that your soldiers, your signal soldiers, are not going to have. And that's the same thing for me as an armor officer, being a combat arms officer. I understood what those guys on the front line needed, and I just took that with me. And then everything else, just tried to learn the technical aspects of my soldiers.
All right.
If I could add,
Good.
one quick thing is just I was only signal, but having led those that transitioned over, be careful on where your commitments lie. A lot of the best signal officers in the future came over from a branch detail, and a lot of the worst ones came over from a branch detail. The best ones retain that fundamental planning skill. So signal, OBC, or BOLIC, whatever it's called now, that planning factor is there, but it's not touched on as much as it's harped on in your IBOLIC. They spend a lot of time teaching you planning, op order writing, etc. Those are the best signal officers, the ones that understand the orders process and how to plan and execute a mission and how to support the warfighter. The worst ones are the ones that stay buddy with 3-shot, with all the line units and everything, and they discount what their soldiers are there to do. They don't want to spend the time to learn all the widgets and the gig and flipping watts and all the things that we talk about in Nerdland, right? Same for any branch to transition into. It doesn't have to be signal. It can be into a logistics field. It can be into the admin field, a medical field. Some of those people forget that their commitment just changed. You've now committed to support the warfighter. You shouldn't be getting up out of the S6 and running down the line and going out with every patrol. There's a reason why you're the S6. You need to be in the back ensuring that the network is active. You can get all the accolades from the boss from going out and being a combat ready signaleer every single day with a full kit. But at the end of the day, while you're out gallivanting the world, you come back and the network's down. The boss is still looking at you. And the answer isn't, well, sir, I was standing next to you. Well, he's an 11 bang bang. That was his job. His job is to go out there and do that. It's not yours. So remember where your allegiances lie. Take the best part of infantry and whatever your previous branch detail was and bring it over and make it the best part of what you're going to do in signal and read and learn and learn and read.
That's a good point, Eric. And like you said, this is going to be applicable to whatever branch you're moving into after branch detail. So that's a great thing to remember there. I got this one. I don't know who this came from because I dropped for a second, but I pulled these things out of the chat before I dropped. This one says, most of us, if not all of us, are on track to commission. So we'll be a new leader in a unit that we may not have any connections in. How do you navigate your way to build trust and a relationship with your soldiers that you will be in charge of?
I'll tell you the first thing to start with, PT. Hey, so I think Sergeant Major Daly said, he said, yelling doesn't make you skinny, PT does, right? And it's not about even being skinny, but you LTs, young LTs, you're going to get evaluated, right? And on your evaluation, presence is there. And I'll tell you, they say that first perception, the first time somebody see you, that usually is the one to stick. So if you show up to your duty station and you take a platoon on a nice run, hear me out. You don't want to come in there and just break them. You don't want to come in and just break them. But if you come out there, show them that you can lead, you can push with them, be competitive with them, challenge to a push-up contest, whatever. Just be involved and be that. You don't want to be the LT who come in who falls out the run. I promise you don't. Because at that point, they don't want to put you in a leadership position at all. It's crazy. When you first show up to that duty station, I know in 3ID, before you even get to your duty station, you take a PT. When you come to the Warren Reception Center, day 2 or day 3, you're taking a PT test. And if you are a senior leader, or you platoon leader, if you don't, you go on the staff most likely, right? It starts with PT, that presence. Because once they see that you're disciplined enough to take care of yourself, then they believe that you're disciplined enough to take care of them. And it starts with the small things. I kid you not. After a good 4 to 5 mile run in the morning, you go into the DFAC, get a cup of coffee, something to eat. You go in, you start organizing plans for the day. That presence, I tell you, presence is one of the first ways to gain trust. PT. I can't stress it enough. PT. I'm not saying you can have a 300, or excuse me, you can have a 600 APFT or ACFT, but you don't understand your mission, then you're only 50%. We can't do honor bombers in the Army. There's no half and half. You're either 100% or you're all. So when it comes down to it, start with PT and then go back to what we've all stated earlier. Read, doctrine, learn from your NCOs. Learn from that young private who's doing more than maintenance on Monday and similar maintenance on Tuesday. But I'm telling you, it starts with the presence. When they see you, they're going to make an assessment of you. And you're either going to measure up to, okay, this lieutenant, or I don't know how this guy got here, or this girl get here. So, yeah, that's all I have.
Leadership and likership is a pitfall that a lot of lieutenants get into, and let me not restrict it to just lieutenants, because there's probably a lot of people who are beyond lieutenant on the call that can benefit from it. Is there's a fine balance between leadership and likership, and I think Jen hit on it earlier with positional versus personal power and trust, etc. Is some folks get in there. Remember, you're the same age as your E3s and E4s, and so you get to having fun in the field when you're in the tent, in the truck, etc. And you feel as though people are doing things because they're doing things because they like you. No, a lot of times people are doing things because that's your job to tell them to do things. So one thing I go in every organization and tell everybody is, hey, I'm not here to make friends, but I will be friendly. I absolutely, anybody knows me, I'm friendly until I'm mad, but I'm friendly. I'm not here to make friends, but I don't mind walking out of this organization with a friend or two, but we're not friends while I'm here. I don't care if you're my battle buddy, unless we go by first name basis and we knew each other since VSU and NATCON 2020. You know, it's not that kind of party. So be very careful when you go in there. But on the same token, don't be a jerk. So just because you're not supposed to lead by likership doesn't mean that you shouldn't be liked. People should want to do things for you because it's you asking them to do things. Your peers should want to come support you because it's you that's asking them, because your name has value to them. Your name comes with assistance. Your name comes with support. Your name doesn't come with spotlight. Your name doesn't come with, look what I can do. All right. And same with your soldiers. Your name doesn't come with, hey, you guys go do this while I sit in the office and I watch TV, or you guys go out on mission while I play video games in the top. All right. So be very careful on the leadership versus likership. But again, don't not be liked. A lot of people think that you have to be this gung-ho rodeo stallion every time. And that's not the case. And I don't care if you're combat arms or you're a supporter. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Hey, LJ. I'm sorry, ma'am. Go ahead.
I was saying, also when I was a young officer, there's the difference between being liked and being respected, you know, and which one do you kind of maybe care more about, or which one do you want? But from the Air Force perspective, we don't do that much PT, so we're definitely not getting to know our airmen that way at all. But for aircraft maintenance officer, you know, I have a whole bunch of back shops, and I have maintainers out in the flat line. And for me, as my 4 years as a lieutenant, right, it was going out there and doing that work with them on swings, on mids, on day shift, in the rain, in the snow, in the heat. You know, I remember going out there and washing the aircraft. When that soap gets in your mouth, it just numbs your whole mouth up, right? Like, it's just doing all of those dirty jobs and all of those hard jobs that they're doing too, to learn about what they have to go through and deal with every day. And for the aircraft maintenance perspective, that's a way, you know, if you get out from behind your desk and truly get your hands dirty and learn what they're doing and doing the hard work, that's how you earn their respect, from my perspective.
Yeah, this is ultimately the most important question about leadership. I mean, regardless of what level you're at, this is it. Like, when you get somewhere new, how do you earn their trust? How do you get people to respect you or get inspired by you, as opposed to just like you or dislike you? I think what Jen said in terms of getting in there, and whether it's PT or the job that they do, getting in and showing that you can stand among them, but not of them, and certainly not above them, is essential to earning their trust. If it's a technical job, developing some credibility, depending upon your level, in your ability to do that job is absolutely essential. Showing them that you value what they do. And ultimately, when you're the leader of an organization at whatever level that is, you're the translator between everything that organization does and the levels above it. And so you've got to protect them from the stuff above them. And by that, I don't mean shield them and not let them know, but translate what the why that is above you in echelons to what they do. And then most importantly, translate the why of what they do and why it's important to everything up above you. Because once they get that, they tend to go along a lot farther. And if you can tag everything you require them or ask of them to do to the why of why it's important for the broader organization and why everything they do is absolutely essential, you will go a long way to building that trust and earning that. And probably the other piece is when they bring something to you, and you got to fight for feedback and you got to fight yourself to make sure you're willing to accept that feedback, is listen and be willing to accept it and be willing to action on it. And explain to them either why it was successful and how they were important to making that change, or why it was unsuccessful and the reason it was unsuccessful. So again, yeah, we don't do a lot of PT in the Air Force, although when we can, I think it's important. But even so, you can't be the person out of shape. You got to set the example, especially if you want others to follow you. So while you may not do it with your unit, you better be doing it on your own, so you don't show up and everybody looks at you like, what is that poor person doing to their flight suit? So yeah. Good question.
I thought that the Air Force PT was that you guys did golf, right?
Yeah, actually, I got a sunburn last weekend doing that. It was awesome.
Okay, here's a question that for the panel. When you guys first started your career, Most of the soldiers, troops, sailors, airmen, etc., were old enough to be your father or mother, even your grandparent. How did you cope with that and lead them effectively?
I guess I'll start. So I'll tell you, it goes back to that initial counseling, right? So that initial counseling, I told my platoon sergeant, I looked at his ERB, now his SRB, soldier record brief. I said, hey, Sergeant, you got 15 years of experience, fresh out of college. I need you to, I'm counting on you to train me. I understand that I am the hand receipt holder for the platoon. I understand that the decisions for the platoon come from me, right? As a platoon, you make all decisions as a platoon leader. That platoon sergeant is your right hand who will really guide you, right? So there's no way to change it. That when you come in, you're going to be junior to your NCO in terms of service, but in terms of rank, you are that senior ranking official within your platoon. So just coming there humble and knowing that, admitting it, and not coming in and saying that you know absolutely nothing. That's not the case. You know a lot. Your university and the U.S. Army has prepared you to take over that platoon. It's just you're counting on them to coach you as you progress as a young lieutenant. It's the biggest thing.
I would say two things. One, engage them right away as having value in their experience. So the Air Force Weapons School motto is humble, approachable, credible. And I think that applies to any leadership position. So just like Ty said, come in there humble, be approachable. So if you shut down every senior person who gives you advice because you're like, I'm the lieutenant, I got this, that doesn't work out. So be approachable and be willing to take their advice, and then use that approachability and build your experience up to be credible, and offer, especially your senior enlisted, to provide you feedback and to give you perspective, behind closed doors and not in front of everybody, and respectfully, to say, hey, you've got experience in this. Let me know what you think. And then one other thing that I saw Tom threw in there in the chat for hard power versus soft power, I completely agree with that. I certainly don't want my approaches to leadership to come off as always, kumbaya. There is definitely time to throw down, have your red line, set your expectations. But the thing I've definitely learned, and I fail at still to this day, is be mad with a purpose and be mad intentionally, and never be mad just because you're mad. I mean, same thing with like parenting, but same thing with leadership. So there are times to emote frustration and anger, but plan for it, know why you're doing it, and never have it be personal to direct it towards anybody. And I think that'll go a long way. Over.
Yeah, if I could talk about one example, and this wasn't necessarily when I first came in as a lieutenant, but it was this discussion just brought something to mind. When I was a company commander, it was the first time I had a service member in my command get a DUI, and I had a friend in high school who was killed by a drunk driver, and I take those things very personally. And so the hard power versus soft power, this is a good example of one of those times where I just, I planned for it, just like the colonel said. I knew what I was going to say. I knew what I was going to do. I talked to my first sergeant about it, and I brought that soldier in, and I had a very strong one-way conversation with him, and counseled him. My first sergeant was in the room, and let him know that I was, that this is not okay, not acceptable, and some other disciplinary actions were taken. But then after I got this, I also knew the soldier was, I wanted to make sure that the soldier wasn't having, some sort of personal challenge that led him to make bad decisions. So after I had my very one-way conversation with him, I very quickly flipped the switch, and I sat down in my chair and told him to sit down on the couch in my office. And I said, okay, so now what's going on in your personal life that I can help you with? What led you to make this bad decision? Why are you here? Why are we having this conversation? And what do we need to do to fix it? So that was just a very valuable lesson, a good lesson that I've carried with me. It was very deliberately planned, something that I had sought advice from mentors on. I didn't do anything in immediate, I didn't run to get him out of the jail cell and start screaming at him as soon as he was picked up from jail. I made sure I was calm and I was in the right frame of mind, and it was very deliberate how I approached it.
Okay. Thank you guys for those answers. The next question we have is a really, really hard one. What are some of the tips that you guys might have on deciding what branch to go into?
I'll jump on this one. This is what every cadet wants to know. I know you think about this, especially if you come in as a 4-year scholarship recipient like I was. You're thinking about that right from the beginning. What is it that I want to do? And if you don't know exactly what you want to do, that's okay. Because one of the, at least on the Army side, one of my favorite things about being in the Army is that there's lots of opportunities to try different things. So I think you should start with, maybe a 5-year plan. What is it that you see yourself doing in the first 5 years in the Army? I know I didn't want to be a career combat arms officer, but I knew I wanted to have that combat arms experience. Again, as I talked about earlier, it was to make me more appreciative and understanding of what it is the people who I need to support are doing on the ground. So for me, the branch detail was a great way to go. To this day, I strongly recommend branch detail. I'll continue to advocate that for that always. I think if you can get that combat arms experience, you're just going to be all the better for it. And then, it's, maybe something in your major that you want to try to do through the Army. Maybe you're only going to serve in the Army for 4 or 5 years and you're going to get out. So what's going to set you up for success afterwards? I've switched from armor to signal to public affairs. So I still, trying to figure out exactly what it is I want to be when I grow up. But for me, the switch to public affairs became, I was in the Army for 10 years. I was fortunate enough for the Army to send me to graduate school, and I got my master's in public relations. So for me, at that point, it became, okay, I'm over the 10-year hill, heading to, now I'm committed for the full 20. What is it that I can take this degree that the Army gave me the opportunity to earn, and how can I apply that in the Army and still serve my country, but also start to set myself up for what I want to do one day after I leave the Army and hang up this uniform. So I think those are things you can start asking yourself, kind of your short and long-term goals, and what it is you see yourself doing, and kind of go from there.
I don't know if you, as you come into college, you have an undergraduate major. And so my story was, when I graduated high school, my ultimate goal was to become a doctor. Started school as a chemistry pre-med major, thought I was going to stay on track with that, but ended up getting to organic chemistry and was like, nah, I don't want to do this anymore. But knowing that I still had that commitment to the Army, Medical Service Corps, I knew that as a branch to be one that I could, go into. And so I pursued that avenue. Even though I ended up graduating with a mathematics degree, I still wanted to work in the medical field. And so you sometimes just have to, ask yourself, do I have a passion? Is there something that I'm really looking for to get out of the Army, whether it be personnel, combat arms? I knew I didn't want to do any of that. So just ask yourself that internal question first. You might not figure it out right away, but throughout the program, I believe they still have branch day, where you get exposed to the different branches in the military. So just take advantage of that. Don't rush into the decision. You have 3 years to make it, and so just try things out, like Tom said.
And I'm going to find the virtual. So great thing about COVID is that we moved a lot of things into the digital environment. So on the Cadet Command website, I just got to go back and get the link. They did a virtual branch orientation last year for those who commissioned last year, where Cadet Command took every single branch across an entire week and did 4 and 5 sessions per and recorded them. So if you want to hear what the branch is about, kind of take a look at those videos. But my addition would be ask somebody, ask somebody who did it. We're all Pershing Rifles. The best part, and we talked about this just in the other room, Willis, the best part about this fraternity, as opposed to any other organization that I've joined through college and life, is you have thousands of mentors in the field, from Air Force to Marine Corps to Navy to Army to logistics, signal, et cetera, right? They're here. All you have to do within 3 to 4 calls is ask a question or get in one of the private Facebook groups and drop a note and just openly ask, you know, what does it take to be a signal officer? What does it take to be a public affairs officer? You know, Colonel Campbell will probably say, hey, it means you got to pick something to do first. And then once you hit captain, then reach back out to me and I'll tell you what all it takes to move into public affairs, which is what you need to do with your life. Right. So I would say one of the biggest things is use the network. You joined the National Society of Persian Rifles and National Society of Persian Angels for a reason, because there are people who are going to naturally transition into a skill set that you can now immediately grab a hold of.
That's a great comment. And, you know, we talked about, as you said, we talked about this a little bit in our meeting with the alumni companies on how alumni companies can give back. And the alumni that are here and that are not here with you undergrads and young officers are just waiting to help. They want to help. They want to talk with you guys. I understand sometimes it may be apprehensive to, you know, for folks to reach out. Don't be apprehensive. One of the brothers, I think it was Cap, said, you know, approachable, that we are approachable. So, you know, don't hesitate to contact us, as he said. Anybody else want to jump on that before I go to the next one? If not, the next question here is from my undergrads, James Stiff. Was there any instance during your first contact as an officer that made you consider not continuing your military career? And if so, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I got one. I would say it was not so much during my first one as I guess it kind of was. I had a 10-year commitment after pilot training in the Air Force. So I was in for the long haul from the very beginning, or at least most of the long haul, and then continued on from there. But after I did weapons school and went up to Alaska to be the weapons officer for the squadron, basically you're in charge of the tactical flying capability of the squadron. I was in the Heritage Room one night late with just my squadron commander, and it was a one-on-one kind of counseling session long into the evening. And he basically kept wanting me to commit that my number one priority is being the weapons officer and being in the squadron. That was my number one priority in life. And I was like, I really am committed to it. My number one priority is my family. And that kind of went back and forth for literally an hour of unconvincing me to change the words out of my mouth and me being able to convince him that was not going to change. And so that was one of those that he and I are good friends now. So it was successful in the end, but definitely felt at the time that I was threatening putting my own career at risk. I would say that over time, it has certainly been a balance with the family and with work life. I'm deployed to the desert. I was there for about 7 months, and my wife and 2 kids had hit a wall because she is also a professional civilian working the Pentagon. I got a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they've been home for 7 or a year now since COVID started, and I deployed after about 3 months of that. And so it was very difficult for her to work from home with having to work with homeschooling. They hit a wall. And so I went into my boss and said, all right, here's the deal. I can stay here and I can keep doing what I'm doing, or we can try and figure out some way for me to work from my house. I've got a sweet little skiff set up in my basement now, so that I can keep teleworking for a little while, but I got to go help them. They need relief, and I got to go do it. So I will wake up at 2:30 a.m. and VTC in. And after I finally get the kids off to wherever they're going, I can work back again, but I got to go. And I have a great 06 boss and a great 3-star above him that said, yeah, we'll find a way to make that happen. And so 1, technology is great. 2, it happened to be that I'm in the right position at the right time where I'm able to do that. But if you give your all when it's time to give your all, I found that with the right leadership, the service will give its all back to you when you need it. And again, if you don't compromise, figure out what your priorities are and stick with those for both yourself as well as your family. And it's going to work out. And you know what? When it doesn't, when you hit that point where your values, your priorities, and your personality don't mix anymore with the service, it'll be done. But you know what? When you get out, you'll have your family, you'll have yourself, and you'll find something else that you'll be great in. So yeah, that's my quick or not quick story. Hope that's helpful.
I'll go next since there's a little silence there. So when I first I deployed to Iraq in 2006, and it was a long 13-month deployment. And I just had my first child before I deployed, and he was probably about 10 months when I left, 10 months old. He's going to be 16 next week, so and soon to be getting a learner's permit, so it grows up fast. So 13 months away from the family, away from my new son was tough. And then my son was diagnosed with autism towards the later half of my deployment. So having that on top of it made that deployment feel even longer, because my wife was trying to figure out, autism was a fairly, something that wasn't really researched or talked about like it is today, back when he was diagnosed. So my wife was trying to navigate that and figure all that out. So when I came home from Iraq, like a lot of people of my peers, I thought strongly about getting out of the service, and that might be what's best for my family: more stability, more predictability. But as has been said by other members of this distinguished panel, just don't make an emotional decision. Have a plan, think it through. I thought hard about it, talked to my wife about it, involved her in the decision, looked at what other things I might want to do. And of course, I was very young at the time. And, ultimately came to the decision that it was best for me and my family to continue my service in the Army. So, and the Colonel just kind of talked about finding that right balance of military and civilian life. And you're allowed to have a personal life in the Army or the Air Force or the Navy or whatever service you join. You're allowed to have a personal life. It's okay. You're a soldier 24/7, certain expectations that come with that, but you're allowed to have a personal life. So one of the things I try to go by is that I work to live, not live to work. That doesn't mean that I don't answer late calls or have late emails, because I do, but I try to make sure that there's time dedicated for my family, and for myself, away from my family, for things that I can do for just me too. One of the things I like to do is play volleyball a couple times a week. That's kind of my outlet. So I think not making the emotional decision, having a plan, understanding what you want to do, making sure all those things converge. And if the right decision is for you to get out, then that's great. Thank you for your service, and you'll have a good skill to carry on with you. But if not, just make sure you think through all those things, and then make sure you have the right balance in your family life and your personal life.
So I want to say something about work-life balance. I don't necessarily prescribe to the quote work-life balance, because in my mind, balance means all things are equal. And coming from starting as a dual military couple, my husband was in the Army for the first 9 years, and I'm still in at 22. And so there's going to be times, at least from my perspective, where if there's a married couple and they're both career driven, someone is going to have to take a back seat at some point, especially when kids get involved. And so I'll say that as you look at what success is to you, only you can define that. And you'll come in and say, hey, I think I might want to do 5, I want to do 10, I want to do 20. And you'll have people in your ear that may be telling you or trying to dictate or encourage you to do certain career paths that may not be the level of success for you. Although I'm a colonel now, being a battalion commander, lieutenant colonel, that's success. If I didn't do anything else after that, I would have been good. And so only you can determine what's success. So like I think Cap said, and Tom, when it gets to that point where family may be a higher priority than your career, then you have to make that decision. For me, coming out of command in Colorado, I knew coming to the DC area, I wanted my daughter to be able to be in high school all 4 years in the same school, because my son was not going to get that opportunity. They have moved every 2 years, changing schools along this ride with me. I have a civilian husband now, so every time I move, he has to pick up and start over. And so that is commitment, but we have committed to this Army culture. This is who we are. And so every decision that we make from here on out, we have to make as a family. And so as one of the things I will say, and I'm going off on a tangent, in your career, don't be afraid to ask for what you want. Okay. You don't always have to take what the military tells you, but don't be afraid to ask for what you want. And so I say that to come back to us being in the DC area. I knew I wanted my daughter to finish high school from the same schools. So the first assignment, I was assigned to the Pentagon. My senior service college list came out. I knew I wanted to stay in DC, so I preferenced to stay in DC. And I took a risk of asking for the Walter Reed command. I didn't really want that command, but at that point in my career, family was more important. And so fortunate for me, I was blessed to be able to stay in DC. I'll be in DC through 2023, and my daughter will graduate. And anything else after that will be a plus. And so define success for yourself, work-life balance. I don't necessarily ascribe to it, but do what works for you and your family, and everything will work out fine.
I do want to put a quick plug in for a very little known program. So it's called the Career Intermission Program. And so it's a DoD wide program for officer and enlisted. So I'll tell you my personal story. 2017, I did 1 year deployed. I did multiple years as an operations officer. I did 3 commands, 3 years in a row, back to back to back. And I'll be honest with you, I was mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. I've also spent 6 years in Korea, where my mom lives. And so I go back to help take care of her, and trying to do that in command was just exhausting. So I took 18 months away from active duty under the Career Intermission Program. And I can tell you, I hate that I got to that kind of point in my life where I was mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. But those 18 months away from active duty was the best thing that ever could have happened to me, because I continued my leadership journey. I was still taking classes online. I participated in different fellowships. I actually got hired to be a chief of staff in the Colorado State Legislature. So I was able to do a whole bunch of cool and new and amazing things where I learned and I grew as a leader and just as a human being. But those 18 months in the Career Intermission Program were just amazing. So it's okay to put you and your family first. In the Air Force, one of our core values is service before self. And I see it in my enlisted airmen all the time. I think there's a line though still, right, where you still have to take care of yourself and your family. But the Career Intermission Program, you can take up to 3 years off of active duty. Like I said, it's officer enlisted for all the branches of the military. And it's just a really great opportunity to, if you take care of family, take care of a sick family member, or if you want to go do something new, you want to go back to school full time, you want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. It's just a good opportunity. It's meant to be a retention tool, right? Because folks do sometimes need a break, right, to take care of themselves and to take care of their lives. And, we want to keep those individuals long-term in the military. So it's meant to, hey, go take up to 3 years off, take care of what you need to, but come on back. So Career Intermission Program, it's a great opportunity.
Right. You guys must have been reading the chat window as you were answering questions, because the question that I was going to ask next were related to some of the points that you guys have brought up. It talks about how do you balance your life with military and with family, and then there's a question here about civilian networking, saying we function kind of like a military version of Masons. We exist to not exist. Not sure what that means, but what about the civilian world? How do you balance your military career with your work and civilian life? So we've talked a little bit about work-life balance. The question about civilian networking, whoever asked that question, if you guys want to clarify that a little bit more in the chat window, I can bring it up. But how do you guys balance? Is there anyone on the panel? I think there's anybody that's a reservist now or a guardsman now on the panel.
So I'll kind of chime in a little bit. So I'm not your traditional reservist, of course, but I work with a significant amount of them. And so if you're guard, reserve, doesn't matter, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine, you have to find that balance. I think I said earlier or on our prep meeting, I almost got, as an S3, almost got 3 company commanders fired from the regular job because I didn't have the right mindset going into a reserve organization. I come from a right now organization. Every job I've ever had, I've had a soldier in my face right now. So when it needs to get done, you go do it right now. It's a lot different as a TPU or an M-Day soldier when you're trying to commit yourself, because a lot of us naturally want to be leaders, whereas you have a better work-life balance in the National Guard and Reserves if you choose to be a staff officer and not in an actual titled command or platoon leader, those traditional I lead platoon positions. Because of why? It's going to ask a lot of you. But I will say to that, some good mentors really toned me down and allowed me to help maintain that time. Brigadier General Hagler, she told me one good thing: if you're in the Army, if you're in the National Guard or Reserves, and the only time you think about the Army is 24 days a year for drill and 14 to 30 days for AT or ECT if you're in the Reserves, Army Reserves. It's time to go ahead and hit that packet. You need to go. Now, that doesn't mean that this is all you do. As soon as you get off work, you go home, you open up a government BlackBerry cell phone or a laptop, and you get to work. But when you have those down periods, when you're riding on the elevator, when you're doing your workout in the morning, because you still got to maintain your fitness, when you're doing your workout in the morning, or if you're just at home on a Friday night getting ready to turn on the TV and you crack open your favorite bottle of whatever it may be, alcoholic or non-alcoholic, apply some thought to how you can make your service and your unit better. So how do you have that best work-life balance? From some of my guys that kind of talk to me, and there are some in here, chime in. I know Ty Young, Makita Ty Young, I'll shout her out right now. Go follow her on every social media platform. She's an epitome of work-life balance. She works very hard on and off orders at time in the Army, and she lives her best life working towards the medical field in her civilian capacity, as well as hosting a television show down in North Carolina. You know, find what makes you happy in life, I think is what somebody said earlier, and be really good at it. But don't forget that you chose to be a leader in some capacity in the Reserves and Guard. So spend some time with that as well and balance the two. The best part about the Reserves and the Guard is you pick your mode of service. If it's not for you, the career intermission program is every day of the week. You can walk in and go in the IR tomorrow. You know, you take your time off. If you don't like the traditional drilling status, doesn't matter if you're Guard or Reserves, Air Force or Army, you can join the IMA program and choose to serve as you wish. My IMAs that I manage, I told them, hey, you do what you need to do and leave at least 1 week's worth of drills available for me to use you how I need to use you. So Captain Delos Reyes would show up on October 1st. He would work on all his drills in AT till November 17th. And within the first week, he knocked out all his mandatory requirements. He helped me out and he chucked the deuces and said, I'll see you with a beard for the next 6 months. I'll see you next year, right? Those are opportunities to get that. But in the same token, he came right out of that moment, hopped back into a unit and took command because his personal life now had the affordability where he got that new job. He built his residence in that new job. And now he can afford to take a little bit more effort in his military TPU or M-Day career. So I would say in the Reserves and Guard for the civilians, make sure you figure out how to get that balance. And I can't really give too much advice on the active side because everybody on the panel that knows me knows I'm absolutely horrible at work-life balance or work-life integration. I work my butt off and preach to the choir to be everything but me at times.
Hey, thanks, Eric. I've got, looking at the time, we got about 15, 16 minutes before the financial session is supposed to begin, and I got 2 questions to get through. Lieutenant Mylan Lincoln is asking, what are some ways to encourage crosstalk and collaboration amongst the other officers in your organization?
I'll take that first. I can pause. Okay, I'll roll in real quick. That's the key. So I would say step 1, although I'm failing at this right now, is listen more than you talk. So if you want to get people talking to each other, listen to them, listen to what their interests and concerns are. And as you help build the connective tissue between them, because oftentimes what one can't solve, the other one can, or what one has experienced, the other one hasn't. And so by listening at the various conversations you are in and considering what their interests and concerns are and making that networking, that is the root of effective networking. It's not just about going out and meeting people and, you know, sharing drinks with them, giving them high fives. It's about building a network of support amongst your peers. And when you're able to do that, you become a really effective leader. And your organization will value you even more, because if you can help them make your boss and your boss's boss job easier and make it more effective, then you're helping the mission out even better. So listen, find out their concerns, and link up people that can help each other out, because oftentimes it's not you that can solve the problem, but they can solve the problem together. Over.
Awesome. Anybody else? Before we jump to the next one?
I'll just say it's just spending time with them. Like even now as a 05, right? Me and my peers, we all try to, you know, eat lunch together, eat breakfast together, get coffee together, right? So it's just spending time with each other and getting to know each other. I think in the Air Force, I feel like sometimes there's this culture of competition over collaboration. So you have to sometimes break down the walls and really get to know people. And sometimes you have to give out the olive branch, right? Like I recently got a whole bunch of like, you know, performance report bullets, and I shared it with all my peers, right? So somebody's gonna kind of has to start that chain, and then everybody else jumps on. But it's just spending time with each other, getting to know each other, and then helping each other out and looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, I remember back to my my new lieutenant days when I first arrived to my unit, and there were probably about 4 or 5 lieutenants that all arrived at the same time, and we all went to the same battalion, and you could definitely feel this. It was very palpable, this desire to compete with one another instead of being collaborative among some of them, and including myself to some extent, maybe more than I'd like to admit. But you're going to feel this desire to try to, you know, among some, to try to one up each other, or you know, you're all competing. You're all competing for an evaluation at the end of the day, right? So and you know, as a new lieutenant, and then as a company commander, you're competing against your peers to get that top block on your evaluation, right? But what I have found in my experience is that if you have that collaboration, and you remember that you know, everyone can accomplish a lot if you don't care who gets the credit for it. Your boss, if he or she is watching, right, they'll see those things. And your evaluations will take care of themselves.
Yeah. All right. So the last question that we have for today's panel is, this is a good one. This is from Bossaday, and she asks, how do you avoid unnecessary micromanagement as a new officer?
Hey, so I'll step in on this one. I'm reading this book right now called Call Sign Chaos, General Matters, the old SecDef. And one of his quotes was simply, operations happen at the speed of trust, right? So the way we move in the military, it's going to be based off that speed of trust. And I say this not to sound like I'm going against the Army, right, or the military in general, but when a new lieutenant comes in, I'm sorry, as a second lieutenant, you come in with a certain amount of trust. All right, when we see a second lieutenant, we know that we have to train that young lieutenant to an extent. So initially, there is going to be some type of micromanagement, right? And over time, you work your way out of that micromanagement. One of the first things you're going to do when you get to a new unit, Army, as a second lieutenant, you're going to run a range. I mean, one of the first things you do. And if your range is successful, once the battalion commander comes out and the battalion commander sees that you have your ECP set up, your entry control point, you have your RTO calling back to the tower saying, hey, we have VIPs on our range. We have a safety at each, one for every 3 M4 firing positions. It takes time. Like the trust is not automatically inherited. To an extent, it is. We trust that you're going to lead America's sons and daughters, but it's also amount of development that happens. And the company XO, that company platoon, your platoon sergeant, the company first sergeant, the company commander, they're going to train you to get to that point that you build that trust, and then you can operate. So initially coming in, I would say prepare for those first 6 months until you make your mark on ground. It's not going to be micromanagement to the point that you can't operate, but they're going to double tap your homework. They're going to make sure you got your I's dotted, your T's crossed, and that's just the position, right? Because ultimately, what you do as that young lieutenant affects those soldiers on ground, and that's what's important. That's the most important thing. I never forget, back when I was at command, we had a base defense live fire and I had a new lieutenant coming in fresh out of the Citadel. We know the Citadel was a historic college. I could have trusted. He came from Citadel, this lieutenant knows everything. No, I took him to the side and we talked. Hey, so what do you know so far? And then we went over a sand table and then we built his way up. And by the time that exercise was over with, and 3 to 6 months later, that LT built that trust to the point that he said, hey, sir, I got it. And he got it. It takes time to build that trust. That's my biggest thing.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think I've got a blunt answer to it is you can't. All right. You don't know what you're going to walk into. I absolutely hate being micromanaged, yet I've had bosses that have micromanaged me. It's not my option. I moved into the job and I was selected to do the job. All I can do in that job is work in the best space that I have, right? I don't get the option to quit. I don't get the option to walk away and say this ain't for me. I tried that once. And my story is, and a few people that know me know, when I commanded my company in Hawaii, I got very frustrated at my brigade commander because I felt highly micromanaged. And that was just his virtue. That was the way he led, is in your business, in your face. And if he started doing your job, he would continue to do your job more and more until you're ushered out of the organization. So I, against the wishes of my first sergeant, grabbed my guidon on the way out the door, rolled it up nice and neat, walked across Palm Circle at Fort Shafter, Hawaii, up to my brigade commander's building, walked into building 104, kept pushing straight past the secretary, pushed right past his little executive assistant, walked in his office. He looked at me, said, "What are you doing here?" And I put my guidon on this man's desk, this full-bird colonel's desk. Put my guidon on his desk and said, "Hey, sir, you commanded 3 companies, Captain. Welcome to your 4th." To which the conversation got quite a bit colorful. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Siri got me. He's listening, I guess. To which the conversation got quite a bit uncomfortable. But the point was, I guess out of that moment, we had a common understanding, right? Now, I should have probably walked up and just had a conversation. The same conversation I had as a lieutenant with my company commander, very calmly when I felt micromanaged. But as a captain and in command, I was feeling my rocks now. I'm in charge of the organization. And you're supposed to trust me to be in charge of the organization. 600-100 and 600-20. All these regulations say you're supposed to delegate and give intent and let me lead. Understand, visualize, describe, assess, lead, repeat. These are the things I'm supposed to do, sir. But I didn't take the time to calmly explain that. I went and told my boss, "You micromanage me." My exact words were, he said, "This is my house, and you trying to be in charge of my house." And I said, "No, sir. This is my house, and you're the homeowners association, and you didn't just come in and find me. You came over to my house with a lawnmower, cut my grass the way you wanted to cut my grass, and then left me a bill on the way out the door." Now, thank God he allowed me to continue to command after that moment.
Yeah, be careful.
Please
Be
know
careful.
that is
Yeah, that's
not
God,
not for everybody.
normal.
This conversation is not to be taken as the right thing to do, right? Thank God he allowed me to command after that moment. And that he had the patience to take a young froggy captain over to a dry erase board and write a line down the middle of the board and say, "Things I see, things your dumb butt sees." And then we had a conversation about what he saw in my organization and what I saw in my organization. And I will take that lesson with me for the remainder of my career on, again, if your boss is a micromanager, sure, why not? Operate in the space that you're given. Learn how to manage your boss's expectation. Be good at what you do. It's about relationships and reputation. That moment could have ruined me for the rest of my career, even if he decided to leave me in command. All right, but my reputation at that moment was better than that because he knew I was better than that. So,
I had something. Sorry, go ahead. Is that Ty?
Yes, sir. I'll be quick. Hey, so just to add on to what LJ said, again, the question is asked. Again, you're not going to come in with absolute trust. I'm just saying that, right? And I want you to understand why. Never take it personal when I make that comment. This is a very unique profession. I can't think of any other profession that you deploy thousands of miles away from home and possibly not return. So when you're fresh out of BOLIC or the basic officer leadership school, They're going to take time to train you to get to the point that they know that you're ready. So again, if the first day you get to the unit, if your platoon sergeant wants to really look at your range brief or double tap your notes, they're doing it for a reason. Never take it personal. Never react off emotion. This is a very unique profession. Like again, we deploy thousands of miles away from home and possibly not return. So we want to make sure that we train our lieutenants to best take care of our soldiers and take care of each other. That's my last comment. Sorry.
Okay, so I'll throw three things out there in the next minute and 15 seconds. So one is there are some micromanagers who you're not going to stop from micromanaging, so you just got to figure out how to operate within that space. Two, you might be able to shift that. There's a lot of managing up. So there's a lot of managing the leaders that you work for to help them, walk them along the path to where you need them to be to work best with you. Granted, you still have to adjust to them. What I recommend if you are being micromanaged is a lot of it's about trust and a lot of it's about expectations. So as you build the trust, you'll tend to get micromanaged less. But go into that leader, whoever it may be, and say, hey, what are your expectations? Because I don't think I understand them. And then once you understand the expectations and you develop the trust and you show that you can meet those expectations, then you can bring in, hey, sir, ma'am, I feel like I could really help you out and free up some of your time if you let me focus on this. This is what I'm going to do. This is where it's going to go. And I'll touch base with you here, here, and here to see whether it's going in the direction you want. But I think you'll like where it goes in the end. If you can sell yourself and the job you're going to do to your bosses, this will help you out, they tend to start backing away. Now, last piece I'll say is just realize it's not always the person above you that's micromanaging. And a lot of times you got to put the mirror in front of yourself. And certainly as I moved up in ranks, it becomes more and more important to make sure you're not that person micromanaging. And you can avoid that by setting expectations, realizing that the great officer is not the one that is in the office 12, 14, 16 hours a day. If you are in that space working that much, chances are you are micromanaging because you are not delegating or using your folks to the fullest of their potential. So if you ever find that you're always at work and you're the one that's always getting the job done because you think that's what it means to be successful, look in that mirror, because chances are you're missing opportunities to delegate and empower your people to do the job that they need to do. As I moved up, I've tried to do less and less per se with the actual, at the tactical edge. Let my folks do that. I'm there to empower them. I am there to make them able. I am there to help them out and make them go forward. All right, a little longer than a minute 15. Sorry, that's all I got. Over.
All right, hey, I want to thank all the members of the panel. This has been a great session. Really do appreciate you guys stepping up to talk to our younger brothers and sisters and to our peers. This kind of conversation is exactly the kind of thing that I, as the alumni president, am hoping that will be happening not only here at the national level, but also down at the local level, not only with the military, but also with those brothers that go into the civilian sector and even in dealing with issues in life and in school. So with that, I'm going to, again, thank you guys for participating, and to all the participants, you have roughly about 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go get some food, hit the latrine or whatever, and then be back for the 1600 financial management session. So
financial management starts at 16:15. Paul Warren, did you have a question? Paul, did you have a question?
Paul Warren? Okay, Paul?
You are muted.
You're muted if you're trying to ask a question.
All right. I'm guessing it's a mistake.
All right, no problem. And thanks, because I didn't catch the hand going up. So thank you for everybody that participated on the audience side. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you to the panel. And I stand corrected, as the CEO just pointed out. You guys have about 16 minutes now. So we'll see you back here in about 16 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Great job. Appreciate the panel. Great job. Great.